Trump looking and sounding a lot like candidate Trump, delivering an America First message and reprising some of his greatest hits from the campaign trail.
Oh, and he also ad-libbed his pick for defense secretary. That is retired Marine General James Mattis, the highly respected commander, but whose nomination does come with a serious legal hurdle. As for today, the president-elect has a day full of meetings to fill more posts. We have this all covered for you. Let's begin in Cincinnati, Ohio, with CNN's Phil Mattingly. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, John. For more than 3 weeks, the president-elect has been essentially cooped up in one of 3 different Trump properties, not out and about, not talking to people, working on the transition, interviewing potential cabinet picks. Well, last night, that changed. The president-elect got back into his, I guess you could say, more natural habitat. And as Alisyn said, it wasn't necessarily President-elect Trump. It was a lot like candidate Trump.
Our victory was so great. We have the House, we have the Senate, and we have the presidency.
President-elect Donald Trump saying thank you, and I told you so.
Remember, you cannot get to 270, the dishonest press.
Returning to the stage where he appears most comfortable in delivering an unmistakable message. The unconventional candidate who won a stunning victory 3 weeks ago is here to stay.
I love this stuff. Should I go on with this just a little bit longer?
The president-elect boasting about breaking Hillary Clinton's blue wall.
We didn't break it, we shattered that sucker. That poor wall is busted up.
And taking a jab at his former opponent while firing up the crowd with some red meat.
We did have a lot of fun fighting Hillary, didn't we?
But also calling for unity of a deeply divided nation after a contentious election.
We condemn bigotry and prejudice in all of its forms. We denounce all of the hatred, and we forcefully reject the language of exclusion and separation. We're going to come together. We have no choice. We have to, and it's better.
Trump stressing the populist message that won him the White House.
From now on, it's going to be America first, okay?
While doubling down on key campaign promises.
We are repealing and replacing Obama. We will finally end illegal immigration. Have to. We will construct a great wall at the border.
And veering off script to break some big news about his own cabinet.
I want to save the suspense for next week. And don't let it outside of this room.
Trump announcing that he has selected retired Marine General James Mattis as his Secretary of Defense.
Mad Dog Mattis. They say he's the closest thing to General George Patton that we have, and it's about time.
While defending the other wealthy cabinet picks he's made so far.
He knows how to make money. I've been honest. I said, I am going to be putting on the greatest killers you've ever seen.
The raucous rally coming on the heels of Trump's victory lap at the Carrier plant in Indiana.
Companies are not going to leave the United States anymore without consequences. Not going to happen.
The president-elect touting the deal, spearheaded by his running mate, the current governor of Indiana, to keep nearly 1,000 jobs in the state.
Carrier chose to stay in Indiana because America chose to make Donald Trump the next president of the United States.
And Alisyn, there's a really interesting wrinkle to keep an eye on that defense secretary nomination. James Mattis has only been retired since 2013. Now, he actually needs to be retired for more than 7 years to be eligible for the position. Now, I've talked to Trump transition officials. They don't believe it's going to be a problem getting congressional officials to actually secure a waiver for him to be eligible for the spot. In fact, Senator John McCain, who chairs the Senate Armed Services Committee, Mac Thornberry, who chairs the House Armed Services Committee, both said they're ready to get to work, fully supportive of this process. But keep an eye on Democrats. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, a crucial Democratic voice, came out within an hour of the president-elect making this announcement, saying she was opposed to granting that waiver, saying, quote, "It is a fundamental principle of American democracy to keep civilian control of the military." Again, we don't expect major problems, but already one key voice opposed to that process.
Okay, Phil, thanks so much for that reporting. Let's discuss all of this. including last night's rally. With our panel, we have politics editor for TheRoot.com, Jason Johnson, CNN political analyst and national political reporter for the New York Times, Alex Burns, and CNN chief political correspondent Dana Bash. Great to see all of you. Alex, help us understand why this 7-year transition period from being in the military to serving in the cabinet is important.
Well, historically, it's seen as one of the sort of bulwarks and separation of powers between control of the military and control of civilian government. That the principle in the United States is that you have people who are not in uniform commanding people who are in uniform. And the notion that you have in Donald Trump, a president with no governing or military experience of his own, now deferring to a very recently retired member of the military in staffing the Pentagon. We've never really seen something like that before. But having said that, I think you're probably not going to hear all that much criticism from the Hill, because a lot of folks who are concerned about Trump's inexperience are going to be reassured by the selection of someone like Mattis to run that.
When they created the Defense Department after World War II, they wrote this into law. I mean, there were lawmakers who thought it was so important to put it down in writing that the Pentagon would be run by someone who's out for 10 years. Then they changed it to 7 years. But it is something that is on paper, but I'm not sure the paper is going to matter, Dana, because people in Congress, by and large, really seem to like General Mattis.
That's absolutely right. And it is a principle, as Senator Gillibrand said, that Congress and people who govern the United States should keep in mind. But, every situation is different. And to your point, Donald Trump is very inexperienced on the world stage. Not just that, you also have a lot of Democrats and frankly, maybe more importantly, Republicans, hawks like John McCain, who really like Mattis, who see Mattis's position on some things, like, for example, Russia. He's very critical of Russia, of the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, whom Donald Trump has not been critical of. And so the people on Capitol Hill who are concerned about Donald Trump are hoping that Mattis can sort of steer him in the more critical direction of Russia. And then just take waterboarding, for example. I mean, that is a perfect example of, during the campaign, Donald Trump said over and over again that he wants to reinstate enhanced interrogation, waterboarding.
And where's Mattis?
And Mattis is against it. And not only is he against it, Donald Trump specifically told the New York Times that because Mattis is against it, he made Trump rethink it. Right. I mean, that's to somebody, again, like John McCain, who is the chair of the committee, who has been a longtime opponent of that kind of stuff. I mean, that's why one of the reasons he's going to push so hard.
Jason, President-elect Trump has been quite direct about how much he likes generals.
Yes.
He has a lot of respect for them.
Yes, he does.
He likes putting them in his cabinet. Do you think that this Mattis selection now has a domino effect on whether or not General Petraeus could be Secretary of State?
Petraeus is a more complicated issue because of his background, because of the potential hypocrisy of putting someone in a position who actually was convicted of releasing information, and he got involved in an affair with his biographer. So I think you've got even some Republicans who are concerned that Petraeus may turn into a mess. Mattis, I think, is a different situation. I, like most American patriots, am concerned about the idea of someone who was just this recently in the military being Secretary of Defense.
And why? What is your fear?
My fear is it's just like with lobbyists. You've had presidents try and pass laws to say, look, once you leave Congress, you can't come in and lobby 15 minutes later. I think it's fine for him to have some time as a civilian, for him to be out in America, to be a civilian leader before he comes back and he's in charge of the military. That's the only reason why. We've got lots of great generals. Mattis isn't the only person that he can pick.
No, that's why they wrote it into law. I will say, when you're talking about civilian control and the framers of the Constitution, the main thing that they wrote is that Congress shall be the ones to declare war, which we seem to have given up on a long time ago. So if civilian control was the most important thing to us, we would have done things differently for the last 50 years. Let's look at the cabinet overall right now. Its complexion, as it were, and its makeup with this latest pick with General Mattis. Can we put that up on the board there? We're not in it. They are. All right, look at all them. Right now, I mean, first of all, Donald Trump is well on track. He is filling this cabinet at an equal or more rapid pace than other president-elects have in the past. But as you look at that right now, it is predominantly a white male cabinet with some women there. Dana, what can we expect as he fills out the rest of those blank spaces?
We don't know. I mean, the key question, of course, is going to be Secretary of State. We talked about General Petraeus. I agree with you wholeheartedly that it is, just in talking to people on Capitol Hill, even and especially Republicans, it's going to be very hard for them, even in the world of hypocrisy that is Washington, D.C., for them to say, oh, let's put the guy in charge of the State Department after we spent a year and a half ripping on the former Secretary of State for doing what this guy was convicted of doing.
Does that mean we can end up with a compromise as Secretary of State, a guy like Bob Corker?
Yes.
Because Donald Trump doesn't seem like the compromise kind of president.
He doesn't seem like. So, yes, and I think if it is Bob Corker, to me that is, obviously, Mitt Romney, if it's Mitt Romney, that is the ultimate example of Donald Trump, deciding that he's going to be a statesman and not care so much about what his own base is telling him, which is you can't put this guy in there. But Bob Corker would be sort of the second example of that he is the safe choice. He's a member of the Senate. There's no question he will be confirmed easily unless something that, comes out from his past that we don't know about. But he's also not somebody who seems to be a Donald Trump type. They're just very different personalities, and my understanding is that has been very clear in the meetings that they have had privately.
Let's talk about what we saw last night. Donald Trump was, for all intents and purposes, back on the campaign, on the stump. He was giving sort of one of his quintessential rallies. What did you hear there, Alex?
Alisyn, I think we heard that this is sort of the guy we're going to be seeing for the next 4 years, that there were a number of checkpoints during the campaign, when Trump clinched the Republican nomination, after the convention, during the debates, when you would hear people in his own party say, you're about to see a pivot, you're about to see a more sober and presidential Donald Trump. He's now the president-elect, and he's pretty much behaving the same way that he was a year ago, with a couple additional notes, at least the sort of formal denunciation of bigotry, which is really important. But look, if we're sort of expecting him suddenly to stop being an improviser, stop being this sort of over-the-top showman who makes it up as he goes, I think last night was a big reality check.
All right, panel, stick around. We have many more questions for you.